When I say go, Maddie will hit the timer and you guys can start. Ready, set, go.
My name is Jordan Corley.
And I'm CorleyKaar.
And we'll be presenting today on the topic of Russian food bans. These are bans in Russia. They're in place against the ES and the EU that prevent ES and EU foods from being imported into Russia. Can you give us a better idea of the background of these bans?
So according to the Washington Post's William Booth, on February 28th, Russians took over an airport and parliamentary building in Crimea. In response, President Obama then imposed sanctions on Russian officials close to Vladimir Putin, and the purpose? To dissuade Russia from this course of action.
Now, Russia did still remain in Crimea, and as a result, the U.S. sanctions against them grew to include their energy companies and their Russian banks. And so, Vladimir Putin responded to this by imposing these bans against American foods and against the countries who were imposing sanctions upon Russia in an attempt to dissuade them to stop the sanctions.
The ban includes embargoes on beef, pork, poultry, fish, milk, cheeses, yogurt, fruit, vegetables, and nuts. The embargo is planned to be a detriment to the U.S. and EU's economies for importing sanctions on Russia.
Now, the Russian government portrays this as a way to stimulate its own economy. In a statement from their government meeting, they said, "We must build up the production of potatoes and other vegetables to enhance our food security, especially now that European producers have left niches open in our food industry." But they may be ignoring the risk that this takes on their people as food prices rise.
There may be merit in the bans yet. Daniel Scherf of VOA writes, "Growth in domestic production has reduced Russia's dependence on meat and agricultural imports. Self-sufficiency is a better economy, and high exports with low exports is a basic tenet of mercantilism." CBS News says in 2013, the EU made $15.8 billion, and in exports to Russia, as the US makes $1.3 billion. That is a total of $17.1 billion Russian economics can benefit from.
Now, Russians themselves have mixed feelings about these bans. As Daniel Scherf from Voice of America reports, one of the largest poultry-producing companies in Russia, their CEO stated that, "I think the sanctions against imports are good for us as national producers. They are an additional impulse to further develop Russia's own agricultural production. But is this worth the risk to the people?"
Although America may not be severely affected by the bans, the Wall Street Journal reports that U.S. agriculture exports to Russia are about $1.2 billion, which is less than 1% of the total U.S. agricultural exports.
Now, Russians may find a better impact in Europe, but it's still not very much. Wall Street Journal again reports the ban is expected to hit about 7% of the 75 billion euros in food products that the EU exported outside of the bloc last year. Now, with the effects on the Europe and America shaky, is it worth the risk to the people?
There are doubts, however, especially considering Russia's future in the competitive global market. In Schaef's article, the deputy director of a large Russian dairy company states, "We should not build up a fence to separate ourselves. We produce milk with Swedish equipment. If Swedes were not allowed in here, we would not have the plant or the equipment."
Now, Rezhenko's point is that Russia relies too heavily upon itself for its economy, and it might become a stagnant, isolationist state. And if it's separated from other countries, there's no flow of ideas, and its products will suffer as a result of that, as they can't compete with other products that have been competing in a free market.
There has been a negative impact in the Russian government. BBC reports officials noticed rising prices in frozen fish, milk, and cheeses since the ban. And more importantly, on one island, the price of chicken thighs has gone up 60%.
Now, while these stats don't indicate widespread Russian hunger, what they do indicate is if prices continue to rise, it could affect Russians struggling to get food like the ones pictured. And reform is unlikely in a country that the U.S. Department of State says it pressured major media outlets to abstain from critical coverage.
Purchasing food is a powerful political tool. Peter Singer of the Free Inquiry writes, "A consumer who switches from buying conventionally produced fruit to buying organic fruit is giving an incentive to organic producers to maintain or even increase their production, and at the same time diminishing the resources available to the conventional producer.
So if all of the food on the Russian market is Russian, then the Russian people's, when they buy their food, it can only go to their government, whether they like it or not. And so if they wanted to support a government like in Europe, then they wouldn't be able to do this. And this is especially a problem in a country like Russia, where the people don't have a lot of political power.
Hopefully, reform isn't needed, and the Russian government will take care rather than abuse their people. On the 20th of August, the Ministry of Agriculture revised the bans to allow certain items to be imported to protect the interests of Russian producers and population categories without any detriment to achieving goals.
Now, with the problem stemming from Crimea, it seems that politics would be the best way to solve it. If Russia was to stand down in Crimea, then they could find the U.S. sanctions would stop and the food bans would stop. As Michelle Clement of NPR states, the diplomats seemed eager to show, in recent Russian-American politics, diplomats seemed eager to show that dispute is not sort of a new Cold War, even though Russian nation is traditionally stubborn in relations. Hopefully they can work out a peaceful, political solution.
Through Clement's article, it can be understood that this hurting Russian state, given continued pressure from the sanctions or through diplomacy, may be more willing to talk about restoring the full food market to the Russian people. Only time will tell as the effects of our embargo play out in Russia, Europe, and the United States. Demi, you asked where food justice is? Well, it's Russian to Russia.
Let's start with Tommy. What additional questions came up from your research that you did not get time to research?
Well, additional questions from research came up. Many additional questions. Additional questions include that of the want and the desires of the Russian government for the food market. The Russian government is very secretive. You know, they don't want to show weakness, or they want to be strong like bull, correct? So, Russian government, and as well the uses and the political effectiveness of food sanctions.
Jordan, what advice would you have, looking back over your experience on this topic, what advice would you have for somebody else who's going to research this topic, things that you would do differently next time, things like that?
Well, I might look more into situation in Crimea, see what happens with, I know there are a lot of ethnic Russians there, and see whether or not, Russia is justified in situation in Crimea, because there is a lot of debate about that. And also looking up maybe other solutions other than political ones may be effective.